All right, welcome friends. So nice to be here with you this week. Welcome back to our bi-weekly Ayurveda and trauma healing series. And as if you've been joining over the last number of weeks and months, we've been covering topics on Ayurvedic psychology and healing the inner child, and really how to create this safety in your nervous system so that you can really upgrade your health, feel safe in your own skin, feel calm in the world despite whatever its circumstances are bringing you. And if you consider yourself to be a highly sensitive empath type of person, then these practices will be really, really supportive and healing for you to feel more resilient in your environment and able to weave in your environments in such a way that you don't feel like you're losing a part of yourself. And so, in our last session and in today's session, in our last session, we covered some Sanskrit universal prayers in the Sanskrit language. That's a universal language that helps us connect to this, the beautiful primordial vibrational essence of the very fabric of our existence. And when we chant Sanskrit, it helps calm the mind, but it also helps us connect to our highest nature, our divine nature, the divine indwelling in our heart. And this, from Ayurvedic psychology perspective, is just of highest importance because it ties the subconscious mind into the highest form of food for the mind and the highest form of orientation for the mind. And it brings the light of truth into some of those dark corners of your subconscious that may be unconsciously triggering illnesses, anxieties, insomnia, all kinds of different things. So we really like to look at the bridge between the spiritual, the mental, the psychological, as well as the emotional body, and of course, the physical body. Because I've seen time and time again throughout my practice of Ayurveda in over the last 10 years is that I can only help someone get so far in achieving their health goals if we didn't go into the deeper psychology, if we didn't go into releasing whatever trapped emotions were held and crystallized in the tissues. And once we get in touch with those parts of ourselves, those various different voices, archetypes, and parts of ourselves that maybe didn't know they had something to say or to feel or to emote or trying to get your attention by pulling the strings of your physiology or even anxiety and sensitivity. Part of it is just bringing that wave of calm and presence to each of those parts of ourself. But we need to do that from associating with the highest part of ourself first. And so in today's session, I kind of want to give a more experiential recap of everything we've covered really in the last session, but also like up until this point over the last number of months that we've been holding these workshops and series, and really just give us an opportunity with a little bit less spoken word, a little bit less dialogue around a new concept. Rather than introducing a new concept, I want to give you an opportunity to go deeper into your own inner wisdom through the application of these practices. So we'll start today's session with a couple of breathwork practices, a little bit of a guided meditation. I'll do a little reading out of our inspirational text, and this will give way into a bit of a guided meditation experience. And in this visualization, you'll learn some of the ways, one of the ways that I love to approach just giving the body, checking in the body on all levels and helping it decompress and reconnect to your center. And then we'll do a little bit of chanting. And even if you didn't learn the chants from last week, I'll give a recap in this week. And you can just start to feel out these different vibrations and see how you can connect with the sweet divine energies that are always all around us and within us, guiding our way, our North Star that always is the light, the guiding light that guides us back home to our heart, back home to ourself. And we can chant those together. And those definitely will be time for Q&A. And so if there's any questions that you want to ask, or ways that I can help personalize these classes and information to your specific unique needs, well then as those questions come up, type them in the chat. We'll answer them at the end, or at the end you can raise your hand or unmute yourself and we can engage. But today might be a little bit of a more brief session than usual. Sometimes we go into the hour and a half. We'll probably do about an hour tonight of this recap. Okay, sound good? Nice to see you, Corey, Kristen, Tracy. Welcome, welcome everybody. So let's go straight into the guided practice portion, the opening breath work into the guided meditation. So if you're in a place where you can close your eyes, feel free to do so. Otherwise, you can keep your eyes open, but still connect with your breath. But just take 3 long, slow, deep breaths, really filling your belly. You can bring your hands down to your belly. And as you inhale, you should feel your hands expand. And as you exhale, you should feel everything contract towards the center of your body. So go ahead, take a deep breath in, feel your belly relax and expand. Sip in a little more air, really, really full, and then open your mouth and exhale it out. Let the air gush out. Again, inhale, filling, relaxing into the hands. Sip in a little more air and open mouth, exhale. Really good. And again, one more full deep breath, relaxing the lower belly. And open mouth, exhale. Good. You can keep your hands on your belly if it feels supportive, if you want to just make sure that it's staying relaxed. You can return them to your lap. But now just continuing to breathe in, long, slow, calm, smooth breath, filling into the lower belly. And then exhaling through the nose. So in through the nose and out through the nose now. Exhaling all the air out. Inhaling, expanding that belly, front, back, side to side. Expanding in all directions, nice and relaxed. And exhaling, long, slow, contracting all sides into the core. If you have a little trouble, continue this breath. But if you are having a little trouble relaxing the belly and it expanding when you inhale, you can always lay on your back with your knees bent and feet on the ground. And this just helps your back be stable. And you can imagine pushing the belly up to the ceiling and then letting it relax down to the floor. Some people are reverse breathers and have acquired a breath pattern that creates anxiety and hypersensitivity. So in this way, we first start the foundation by retraining the breath. So inhaling, the belly relaxes and expands. And exhaling, it contracts. And now we'll move up from the belly into the ribs. So this begins the 3-part breath. So inhaling, belly, lower belly, and then the mid-torso, so your rib cage expands. And then exhale, rib cage, lower belly. So you're filling up from the bottom up, just like a pitcher of water. And then as you empty the pitcher, it empties from top to bottom. So inhaling, lower belly, middle rib cage, chest stays relaxed. And then exhale, rib cage, lower belly. Inhale, belly, ribs. Exhale, ribs, belly. Inhale, belly, ribs. Exhale, ribs, belly. Now you're feeling that low, full expansion in the belly and the ribs. And now we're going to add the third part, which is the chest, which moves only a little bit. So inhaling belly, ribs, and then finally letting the chest expand. And then exhaling top to bottom, chest, ribs, and belly. Inhale, belly, ribs, and chest. Exhale, chest, ribs, belly. Inhale, expanding in all directions, belly, ribs, chest. Exhale, chest, ribs, belly. Beautiful. Inhale, belly, ribs, chest. Exhale, chest, ribs, belly. Go ahead and do 2 more of those breaths in your own pace, own rhythm. All right, return the breath to normal, hands back to the lap if they're not already there, and just observe. Great, now the next breath, this one we just did, Dirga Swasam, deep 3-part breathing, is the foundation to all the other breathwork practices. You can use it anytime. We'll build upon it for the next breath practice, which is the humming breath. And if you're familiar with the more advanced versions of the humming breath and would like to use the Marma points and close your ears, I won't recap all of those in today's session. But if you've already been introduced to those, you're welcome to do those. Otherwise, we're going to do it together, just making a humming sound. So for this breath, we'll do 3 breaths. You're going to inhale from belly, ribs, and chest. But when you exhale, you're going to exhale just with a humming sound. And you make the longest possible humming sound that you can make, exhaling the hum from the chest, ribs, and belly. We'll do that 3 long, slow, humming breaths. You can, if you want to amplify the humming a little bit, you can cup your hands over your ears and close your eyes. And that helps the sound reverberate within. So go ahead and exhale all the air out. Full, deep, 3-part inhale, belly, ribs, and chest. And then exhale 3 times with the humming sound with your lips closed. Pause and observe when you're complete. Beautiful. So the advanced practice of that is called Brahmari Pranayama. It's the bee humming breath. But we just did a modified version of it that's still very, very calming and soothing. It brings waves of calm into your nervous system and helps it return to a state of gentle harmony, inner harmony, as you can probably feel just from doing that. And our third and final breathwork practice for today starts to bridge us into the mantra chanting. So this is the mantra breath. And there are 3 sounds that you make as you're doing this mantra breath. And the 3 sounds are ha, H-A, ri, R-I, and om, O-M or A-U-M. And I kind of like to think of this one as om, A-U-M, because it helps us drop our jaw open. So you want the ah to really carry, where you have the biggest, fullest sound in the mouth. And it helps fill the head with the vibration. Ah. The second sound is U. So om as A-U-M brings the sound open with the ah, and then forward with the oo. You'll feel it start in the back of your head and then start to circulate forward. And then the M with your lips closed helps circulate it back internally and bring it into closure in your body. So it seals the vibration of this whole mantra breath chant into your body. And the ha, if you make the sound ha, you'll feel it originate in your lower belly. So try that first. Ha, ha, ha. You feel your belly move. And then re moves it up, moves that energy up the spine. And then om, circulates it through the whole head. And then the seals it in your body. So it's just a very effective way at moving the energy, the prana or chi through the energetic channels called nadis in the Ayurveda and yoga system, called meridians in the Chinese medical system. So we'll do 3 Hari Om breaths together. And if those of you who have learned the advanced phase of this with the head movements, you're welcome to do it. And if it's an appropriate moment for you to do it. Otherwise, we'll do the most basic version of this chant together. And so exhaling your air out, take a full deep breath in and exhale, Hari Om. Hari And then take a moment to pause and observe. There is a space in the heart where everything meets. Come here if you want to find the divine. Mind, senses, soul, eternity, all are here. Are you here? Enter the bowl of vastness that is the heart. Listen to the song that is always resonating. Give yourself to it with total abandon. Quiet ecstasy is here, and a steady, regal sense of resting in a perfect spot. You who are the embodiment of blessing. Once you know the way, the nature of attention will call you to return. Again and again, answer that call and be saturated with knowing, I belong here. I am home. That sweet sanctuary of your heart is where all that you seek resides. Thank you for your comment, Tracy. Tracy said, I really appreciate the chanting. I would like to hear more on the history of that practice. Thank you. So the chanting that we just did, that Hari Om chant, comes from the sister science of Ayurveda. So Ayurveda and yoga are two systems, very vast systems of wisdom that are sciences of the human unfolding their divine nature while they're here on earth in these human bodies. And so the Hari Om practice, as I was originally taught it, there's many different lenses and angles and perspectives that you can find even within these vast systems. As I was originally taught it in the yoga system, it was the effect, the angle that I learned originally was the effect that it has on the energetic pathways in the body. So in terms of, that's why I guided you, the ha originating in the lower chakras or the lower centers of the body, the re moving the energy up the spine, and the om circulating it through helps us connect and open those pathways and bring calm and peacefulness to the nervous system. But in terms of the history of that practice, what I can say to that is that it comes from ancient India and from the Vedas, and that the Vedas are a system of knowledge and wisdom that has been given to us as human beings, as from the wise sages of the ancient times. And they've written, first it was passed down as an oral tradition from disciple kind of tradition. And then eventually over thousands of years, it was written down in Sanskrit sutras. So there are many, many texts that have these multiple verses. And in these Sanskrit sutras, these sutras are like threads. So they're these woven, they're like threads that are just like woven around this vast topic. But in order to understand, you unpack these threads. And as you unpack them, it just unravels this vast, vast ocean of knowledge on many different topics. And the yoga system and the Ayurveda system, specifically the Ayurveda system, is one that helps bring about good health so that in this lifetime we can utilize our human life to fulfill our highest purpose as human beings, which is to remember our divine nature. And if we don't have good health, we can't do that. Or if our divine nature is just a cognition, it's just a thought, we don't have the embodied remembrance of the divine, like in our bones, in our cells. It's there, but how do we remember it? How do we realize it? And so Ayurveda is part of the foundation of awakening in the human body and having a total balance there, or a harmony there, so that you can have the most ease in your whole body, and so that your bodily processes and bodily functions or disease processes or anxieties or tensions can be melted away, so that you can realize the truth that's behind all of that. Because when we have anxiousness and disease and trauma and clouded thoughts, it basically puts a veil between us and our ability to perceive that which we truly are. And so a lot of this system comes back to how can we how can we understand our unique nature? So every human being, every body has a unique makeup, but we're all made up of the same elements, but we have unique ways that those elements manifest inside of each of us. And so the first tenet of Ayurveda is to know thyself. Know thyself so fully as a dynamic, ever fluctuating being who changes from season to season of the year. Because there are different things that bring you good health in the winter versus the summer, for example. So we learn how to do this dynamic dance with our bodies and with nature throughout the seasons of the year, and then also throughout the seasons of life and the seasons of our own internal growth and the seasons of our spiritual growth and spiritual awakening and the seasons of our our relationships to society and our relationships to others and family members. So there's this dynamic, ever evolving dance. And so Ayurveda helps us understand, okay, I can be in naturalness because I'm moving in the rhythms with nature that are natural to my unique being. I'm not trying to be someone I'm not, because if I'm trying to force and push and be someone I'm not, I'm wasting energy, I'm depleting myself, I'm causing more harm, and I'm not able to contribute and give my gifts to society in the way that God designed me to do. So these systems of Ayurveda and yoga help us understand our naturalness, our true nature, and support us in a pathway to remember true self, to remember our higher nature while we're in physical form. So the first chant we just did, and your question, Tracy, thank you, just so beautifully helps us transition into the other chants that we're going to recap and practice again together today. But one of the things that it does is these Sanskrit mantras just help us return to that essence. They hold, the vibration of them just holds the essence. So even just making the sound Om, doing that 3-part sound, Om, inherently contains all of the subtle essence, the fabric of our existence, this subtle fabric of our very existence is contained within just that one whole sound. And so then when we add other sounds to it, it adds layers of remembering. So so with that said, there's one invocation prayer in Sanskrit that we covered last week. And I'm going to put it here in, and this might be actually the only one that we recap and chant together today, because many of you may not have been here in the last session. So maybe we'll just do this one, but I'm going to put it in the chat box. So those of you who are here live in Zoom, and then if you're watching the recording, it'll be posted below the recording of the video. But here's one of the really beautiful prayers that we did last week, which is an invocation of our wholeness. It's an invocation of our wholeness. And so you can click the link to get more detailed or to go back and get the translation. Here are the words kind of written out phonetically. But what this invocation prayer, this wholeness prayer, is helping us remember the emanation of the divine that we really are. So it holds the philosophy in this beautiful sutra, or this little nugget, this little gem, this little packed morsel of infinity, which is like, blows your mind when you actually start to dive into it. But it, on an essence level, when we sing it, it helps us remember, like in our body, it's like a lullaby that we drift off into a transcendental state of remembering the wholeness, the oneness, the absolute that we are an emanation from. And again, this is the pillar, this is like the North Star, guiding light, foundational philosophy of Ayurvedic psychology, because our psychology needs to be oriented to something higher and greater, which is our creator. And part of the challenge in our psychology is that these parts of ourselves and having a human identity creates us into this illusion that we are separate, that we are suffering, and then we are suffering because we feel isolated, alone, and separate. And I mean, at this time in life right now, we are feeling more isolated and alone and separate than any before. And then in more connected in certain ways, right, virtually, but in terms of those real like human contacts, human connection, affection, proximity, closeness, it's a time of a lot of isolation. And so this is a beautiful time that we get to come deeper into our own connection, our own unique connection with the divine in the way that's most authentic for you. And so this prayer has the philosophy wrapped up into it, but it also has the essence wrapped up into it, because the philosophy without heart is just speculation. It's just mental speculation. So we actually want to infuse the two, the essence, the heart, and that devotion in your heart with this philosophical understanding. So the mind has something to orient itself towards that's highly productive for it. Because here's one thing, the nature of the mind is to eat. The nature of the mind is to consume. So in Ayurveda, we call the mind manas. So the nature of the mind is to consume, it is to eat. And today we have all kinds of food, more food than ever for the mind. The mind has, these devices that we're constantly scrolling on, and TV and movies and media and the news, and there's like constant food that is usually provoking fear and consumption. We won't go into all the other layers of why that is, but fear and consumption, meaning the media is constantly trying to, even if it's something that they're trying to promote that's health related, it seems like it's for your well-being, it's somehow to try to sell their product or service, or try to get you enrolled in some belief that you're going to consume and become a consumer, right? A customer or consumer. So part of the nature of the mind is to be doing that. So if the nature of the mind is to be consuming, and you're given information on someone else's agenda, it's going to consume things that make it feel like it constantly needs more. It's insatiable consumption. And then in addition to that is fear. So it feeds fear. So the mind, because its nature is our part of our lower nature, it's already fearful. It's already trying to protect us. It's already trying to, and so when it's fed food that is promoting more fear, it creates this downward spiral. But because we know the nature of the mind is to eat, most people, they'll say, okay, well, I just need to meditate so I can turn those thoughts off. If the mind doesn't have something to actively consume, it will start creating thoughts to consume. It will create its own food, which, so people will be like, oh my gosh, my mind is swirling with all these thoughts. So I'm going to learn how to meditate. I need to calm these thoughts down. And then they'll sit and they'll get really quiet. And then, 2.5 seconds later, the mind is fabricating some food for itself, because it's like, I'm not consuming anything. So it just starts creating thoughts, fears, storylines, what ifs, regrets, what I should have said, could have done, should have done from the past. It starts rehashing. It starts creating fake conversations between you and someone else. And maybe those conversations are based on arguments or defensiveness or trying to prove a point, or who knows. The mind is just doing all of this, but it's because its nature is to consume food. So if you don't give it productive food, it's going to just create its own food, and it's going to continue to reinforce patterns. So the idea here with Sanskrit and with mantra and mantra meditations, or chanting practices, or kirtan, which brings these chanting practices into more musicality and a more full experience of music and layers of instrumentation. One of the beautiful effects and benefits of this is that Sanskrit and these universal prayers give your mind the highest food to consume, and they're actually the mind is actually orienting itself towards the divine, which is where it needs to be directed towards, not just from thought but from essence level. So the Sanskrit brings it down to essence level. And yeah, so we'll sing this chant together. And it's not just a chant, it's a really beautiful invocation prayer. And you'll see in this prayer the word Purna is repeated over and over and over. And Purna is referring to wholeness. It's referring to the fullness and the wholeness and the expansiveness of divine consciousness. So when we think of the eternal expansiveness of God, of the divine, of our creator, of the universe as a whole, this prayer is reminding us that the spark of our soul is an emanation from that divine wholeness. And as an emanation, like think of it as, an ocean, this vast ocean, and all the little water droplets that come off the ocean, that evaporate off the ocean, they go into clouds, and then those water droplets fall out of the sky and they go back to the ocean. They all return to the ocean. That little water droplet is like our soul, and it contains all the everything that the sea contains, but just in a little drop. And in that similar way, we are not just a drop from the ocean, but we are the entire ocean in every drop. So that wholeness and that fullness of divine consciousness, we are an emanation of, and then we are this little glowing emanation from the divine that has developed an encasement around it, which is our ahankar, or our identity, or as some systems would call it, our ego, which is just our identity. And then we have this emanation of the divine covered with an identity, and then the identity thinks that it's separate from the whole. But the deeper part of us knows that we're part of that whole. And so we want to remind our ego, our identity, our mind of the higher truth. And so we sing Om, Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate. Om, that outer world is Purna, it's full with divine consciousness. Our inner world is also Purna, it's full with the divine consciousness. From divine consciousness manifests divine consciousness. From Purna is manifested Purna. The whole entirety of the world is manifested fullness of the divine consciousness within. And even though we're emanations from the whole, this is how it's different, as kind of from the ocean analogy, but nothing is ever taken away from the wholeness. So when an emanation comes out of the wholeness, there's nothing lost. The Purna, the wholeness of divine consciousness, is infinite, and so it's never less than because an emanation comes. So the wholeness of the divine is contained within each of us. And the only reason we have troubles is because we've forgotten that. The only reason we have disease is because our cells have forgotten that. So how do we remind ourselves? Part of it starts by chanting these beautiful universal prayers that help us return to the essence of the very fabric of our existence, which is Purna. So we chant Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. And then we sing Om Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shanti means peace. So we're singing to our inner self and helping our inner self come back into remembrance of Purna, its Purna nature, and really helping our mind, feed our mind the highest food so that we can continue to support the alignment of the mind, the mental self, the lower self, with our highest self, our divine self, our true self. So I'll sing it a few times here, and you just try to follow me along where you are at home. Okay? And allow the essence and the sound, even if you don't get every word, but just more important than the words right now is just to let yourself start to feel the vibration of that concept so that it seeps into your deeper embodied felt sense rather than just being a concept that we're talking about. Okay? Om. I'll start a little lower. Om Purnamada Purnam Idam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. And we'll do the Om Shanti just on the very last one. But please just let me know if my sound isn't coming across cleanly, and I'll change the setting. Andrew, I see you on video. Can you give me a thumbs up? Was the sound okay, or was it, yeah? Okay, and Tracy says good too. Okay, thank you. I know sometimes singing makes Zoom go a little wonky. All right, we shall continue. Om Purnamada Purnam Idam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva vashishyate. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva vashishyate. Last one. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you for chanting that with me. I'm curious how that was for you guys on the other side of your virtual screens. Were you singing it with me? Tracy says, excellent. Laura, beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, it's just such a peaceful prayer. I hope that you'll all chant this one regularly. And if you were here with us on the last workshop, we covered 3 altogether. But this was nice today to revisit this one and go in a little bit deeper to some of the philosophies behind it. So thank you for your questions. And Carolina, beautiful. I'm so glad. So maybe we'll break down the next 2 in more depth and detail and tie it in. Tracy said, could you create a download of you doing the chant so we can learn it? Absolutely. Actually, if you were on this workshop series emailing list, I sent it out the last week or 2 Wednesdays ago. I sent it out. So if I'll do it again though. I'll do just this one alone. Yeah, maybe I'll do that and send that out, and you guys can all practice it. Yeah, it's just so sweet. And I think that there's probably some like recording artists that have, like Deva Premal might have a recording on Spotify. If you put in just Om Puranamidam chant or something, it probably will come up. But I'll just record like a basic one, and then feel free to see if you can find any other versions on like YouTube or Spotify. I can send those in the group too if I find any nice ones. So yeah, any other questions for today? Really, like as you're writing out your questions in these final moments together, I think one of the things I just want to tie this back to in terms of practical use, practice for you at home is to consider doing a chanting practice like this, like the one we just did today, just for a few minutes each morning, like as soon as you can after waking up, just sitting, taking a few deep belly breaths, like maybe the 3-part breath that we did, maybe the humming breath or the Hari Om chanting breath if you want. Most importantly is just to take, a few deep full breaths and have a moment where you just connect with yourself and your higher self. And then bring in some mantra and chanting. Feed your mind that highest food first thing in the morning, because the early morning of each day is the microcosm of the early childhood of your life. And so if there are any early childhood experiences that were less than ideal, or even traumatic for you, this is the time of morning, this is the time of day that you want to do that repatterning, because it's most effective, because it's these little cycles are microcosms of macrocosms. So doing particularly a chant like this Om Purnamidam prayer first thing in the morning as your little practice, to set the stage for your day, the vibration will carry with you all day, and it will help to rewire those early childhood imprints. So Laura said, wow, that's amazing. Is there a specific time or whenever it is that we wake up? Well, definitely whenever it is that you wake up. Your question bridges into a whole nother question of Ayurvedic dinacharya, which is like daily routine. So ideally, you're going to bed early, getting a great full night's sleep, and then you're waking up naturally without an alarm, like before sunrise or around the sunrise. Not the later you wait after the sunrise, just the heavier your body will feel and your mind will feel. So just on the earlier side of waking up and doing these chants, typically there's a time period called Brahma Muhurta, which is like 4 to 6 a.m., like pre-dawn. And that's when the veils between the worlds are the thinnest. So the spiritual worlds are, it's more of a time of day, which is why most spiritual practices and meditation are done in the pre-dawn hours. But those are not always effective for householders. So those are the times of day that are definitely used in ashrams and for like monks, for example, renunciates. But it's just like if you're a householder and you have a family or you have work and all that, it's just when you wake up, let it be a priority. One of the first things that you do, brush your teeth, take a shower, sit to do this before you get into the kitchen and start cooking and engaging with other people in your house is probably the kind of the time period you want to consider. Great question. Thank you, Laura. Any other questions for today? I'll send out an email with our schedule for July. I have some moving parts coming up in my life, some change. So I will be moving at the end of July, but I should be able to I definitely will be good for July and August in terms of doing our bi-weekly workshops. And then some change and transition is on the horizon. And so, but I should be able to lock down some times here soon in terms of our next 2 workshops. And I'll send that out in the email with the recordings, and so that you can practice it. And then next time it should be 2 weeks from now, but I have to look at my calendar and confirm. But yeah, 2 weeks from now, we should be meeting again, and then we can chant this all together again. I would really love that. So thank you for being here tonight, and this is my evening, and many, many blessings to you. Let's all just do one Om together in closing, as if there's no other questions. So we'll just do one big Om and then Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So deep breath in and exhale with Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. I honor and love each and every one of you. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Blessings. You're welcome, Laura. My pleasure. Good night.